First of all, I just want to welcome everybody and thank you. We're very grateful that you come to our lectures, and we're grateful that you're here and part of our community. My name is Elric Walker. I'm a board member. I'd like to just introduce or just acknowledge our other board members. Penny Tarasuk is here. She's a board member and advisor. Mark, how do you spell your pronounce your last name? Iwanicki. This is Mark, who's like our hero today. He's also our treasurer and marketing strategist. Christine Olson is our secretary. She's over here. Erica Lorenz is not here, but she's our president. We also have a past board member here. Carol Beauvais is also here. So, for those of you who may be unfamiliar with Jung or with our association, I wanted to just say a little bit about us and what we're about. What are we about? Dreams, fairy tales, oracles, myths, folk tales, symbols, ciphers, religion, mysterious coincidence, deja vu, healing and wholeness, astrology, alchemy, physics. The psychology of Gustav Jung, Carl Gustav Jung, is both a unique therapeutic school of psychology and a way to study the nature of the human mind and the development of human personality, working toward a discovery of and a mapping of the human soul. And who might be interested in Jungian psychology? For scientists and psychologists, his work provides a map of the human mind and a functional blueprint for what we would refer to as the psyche. For artists, anthropologists, sociologists, and just folks who are interested in a search for meaning in their lives, Jung's psychology offers us a window into experiencing a depth of meaning and expression. So we're grateful that you've joined us. I want to mention that we are an all-volunteer organization. So your donations are very important to us. It helps us to take care of the little expenses that come up with the lectures. There are donation baskets on either end. Please give whatever you're able to. Please connect with us through Facebook, email. We have an email list over here. If you put your email down on that list, please print carefully so we send it to the right address. And we'll put you on the email list, which will let you know when the next lectures are and any events that might be coming up. Also, there are flyers for our next event on the table. If you know of a bulletin board where you could hang one up, please take one or two or three or four and hang them up. I want to thank all our volunteers. I probably won't mention everyone, but I know that Diana Allen is here. Thank you for all your work on Facebook. She helps to create content and watch that, and we're very appreciative of that. We are always looking for volunteers, by the way. We have needs sometimes of just having someone to help us set up here in the room or hang up the signs down on the doors. If you would like to volunteer, please see me after the lecture, and I would love to connect with you and have you help us out. Visit the archives on our website, and you can access previous lectures and presentations there. I also want to mention that we are filming the lecture today, and I want to thank our filmmaker. Would you like to just introduce yourself and tell us about your work as a videographer?
Hi, I'm Sky Karen, and I do filming for events, and if you're interested in hiring me, then you can come talk to me after. So.
Thank you, Sky. Also, because we're filming tonight, if you have any concerns about being filmed during the question-answer period, you're welcome to just say, please don't film me, I'd like to ask a question, okay? We'd like to just honor that. Do we have, are you going to make an announcement about Erica's workshop? Okay, do you have the information about that?
It's actually going to be held at my space. So next on the 21st?
I believe so.
Yes. Yes.
Erica's workshop.
Yes, the dream workshop.
Could you make an announcement about that?
Certainly. Erica will be leading a workshop that explores dreams through creative expression. and it will be held at the Nest Space for Art and Spirit, which is here in Northampton. I can offer more. It's from 10 to 1. Is that what it say, 10 to 1?
It's from 6 to 7:30.
Oh, that's her dream group, sorry.
Oh, it's different?
She's going to do a dreams, a sort of a beginning dreams, creative, expressive approach to dreams on the 25th of January. It's a morning workshop.
I would encourage you, thank you, I would encourage everyone to go to the website and you can get information about these dream groups that Erica gives, and they're wonderful. There'll be one on January 29th and on May 6th. Erica's contact information is there on the website, so please contact her if you're interested in going. As usual, the lectures go on without a pause, so please just use the bathroom whenever you need to. I'm not familiar with where they are, but I think there's one over this way. Yeah, there's one down this way.
I am going to take a break.
Okay. Oh, she is going to take a break, so we will have a break for somewhere midway. If you have a cell phone with you today, would you please silence it now? That'd be very helpful. That just will be so that there's no interruptions. And I think that's all we need to do. Penny is now going to introduce our speaker. Oh, I do want to mention one last thing. Coming up after today's lecture, on Friday, February 7th, our board member Ed Tick, who I did not introduce as I went through, I'm a little nervous. Ed Tick is also one of our board members, and he will be presenting the Asclepian dream healing, ancient and modern. 3,500 years ago, the tradition of Asclepius, the ancient Greek god of healing, originated what would become both depth psychotherapy and holistic medicine in the Western world. Our program will explore Asclepian healing principles and practices, sacred sites, and ancient and modern dream healings. We will apply these teachings to understanding depth psychotherapy and our eternal search for what Jung called big dreams that heal and connect us to the sacred. So that's with Ed Tick, and that's going to be Friday, February 7th, right here, 7 o'clock. So please join us for that. That's going to be great. And now I will turn it over to
Let's see, good. Okay. Well, welcome on a winter afternoon. Thank you for coming out. I think I'd first like to start by everybody just going inside for a minute and taking a few deep breaths. We've had the deity Hermes here scrambling our technology. So let's just take a deep breath and begin. Thank you. Kate Dahlstead okay. Holds a master's degree in clinical psychology as well as a postgraduate certification in body-oriented Gestalt therapy from Hartford Family Institute. She's maintained a private practice for nearly 3 decades and is an experienced group leader. Most recently, she was founder and program director of Soldier's Heart, a veterans healing initiative. She has additional clinical experience in sexual assault and death and dying. She's a published writer of journal articles, poetry, anthology chapters, and has been an adjunct professor at Russell Sage College in Troy, New York, and Connecticut's State University. I'd like to welcome Kate and thank you for all of your patience, and we're looking forward to going to Greece with her.
I guess I have this guide on it. Okay. Well, thank you all for coming. Started out with such a small group now, check it out, that's great. And thank you, Penny, and Rick, Christine and Ed, and all of you, for being here and welcoming me so nicely. And even though we had these technical problems, we thank Mark for at least thank you so much. Couldn't have done it without you. And also, of course, the Young Association of Western Mass for having me. So, I have a number of things I want to share with you. First of all, I want to just mention that I'm just fresh back from a trip to Greece. It was fantastic. I was there for 40 days and dove in deeper than I've ever done before, and that was really exciting and wonderful. So some of that, is what you're going to be probably experiencing with us today. So, I'm going to be talking a little bit, start about archetypes. First of all, I would like to know a little bit about how many people are here for the first time who've never been here. So only a few of you. Okay. And the rest of you have been to a number of the lectures, so you're probably familiar with some of this material. But I feel it's worth it to go through some of it again and to talk specifically to start by talking about archetypes and why we care about archetypes and what are they anyway and all of that. So we can say that archetypes are expressions, metaphoric and otherwise, of the human experience throughout cultures and throughout time. These are the same human patterns of relating and of being that come back over and over. They are the human experience, as I said, collected over time. It's like a collective dream, if you think of it that way. You think of all the collective history and all the mythology that we've evolved. It's like a collective dream coming from the unconscious as well as from the individual psyche. So each of us lives these archetypes in our everyday life. We're just not aware of it. So today I'm hoping we can get more of an awareness of that. Living the archetypes and dreaming them brings us closer, as I said, to the collective unconscious. And in that way, we're becoming closer to the cosmos. I think for some people it's a natural spiritual experience. Even though these are the archetypes, and by this I mean the patterns, the patterns of human relationships and patterns of human experience that we experience in our own lives that are universal. They're living and dreaming them, embodying them, and by embodying them, we'll talk more about that later. Personal in this way, when people discover and talk about the archetypes that they're living, they find a place in the universal. It's like, I'm not alone. I'm not the only one that this is happening to. Oh my gosh, this happened to this person. Oh my gosh, I forgot about that story. How did they handle it then? How did they figure out what was the mythology behind it? Gives us a power of understanding ourselves and our relationships now, today. And it helps us to understand what motivates us, what gives us inspiration and insight. Okay? And that way we can become more self-aware of our choices, of our relationships, and our own gifts and our own liabilities. We may have very strong inclinations that mimic some of the archetypes, some of the myths that are developed out of those archetypes. We may find a lot of those fit who we are, or fit the people that we know and that we're close to. And so by being able to look at them in the stories and the myths that we have about them, helps us to begin to look at our own gifts and our own liabilities. Because all of the myths have lessons to learn, and sometimes they're difficult ones. So our struggles in our own everyday lives gain a greater meaning and help us to understand and accept ourselves in new ways. And maybe to help other people understand and accept us. They're depersonalized dreams. So the myths that we have, the stories that come out of the archetypes are not our personal stories, and yet we can relate to them. They can inspire us, they can touch our creative center. People writing about their dreams and what comes up from the unconscious can be very, very creative. It's not like we don't know these things about ourselves, but there's something about studying the myths and the archetypes that gives us a model. It's not just, I know that I have this tendency to do X, Y, or Z. Oh, now I see. It's part of an archetype. That's what Athena would have done, or Artemis, something like that. So it gives us a handline, and it gives us a way to know how to proceed. I want to erase this thing up here. Maybe this one. And just thanks. So also when we look at the myths and the archetypes, we can change our thinking and our belief system about what's pathological and what isn't. Because we can think that a grieving mother, maybe after losing a child to a miscarriage or something like that, we could think that, oh, she's terribly depressed and she's gone into this terrible place and, and she needs to be drugged and we need to get her, back functioning and all of that. When actually she may just be a grieving mother, and she needs space to grieve. And there, we have the archetype in Demeter of the grieving mother. And if she can connect with that and say, oh, okay, this is normal, this is how I should be, this is a process, and I will come out of it. So these are some of the ways that we can begin to look at how to use what we know from mythology. So the truth is that even when we're not conscious of it, we are living the myths and that come out of the archetypes. So we're living a pattern and we don't even really know that it's a universal pattern. We don't even really know that it's been done over and over and over again through a millennium. And so helping us to gain a sense of the okayness of ourselves, we can accept and look at how the archetypes live, the myths live in us and through us. And when we know that, when we see that we're living a myth, we can choose to change it. We can choose a different course. We can choose to look at other myths and other stories and other archetypes and models for how we want to be and how we might want to change. Question? Anybody want to add anything to that?
I just want to say that your introduction we should have at every lecture.
Okay, great. So I'm going to start just very briefly with the great goddess worship. Of course, when you think about early human beings and how they lived so close to the earth and close to the land and so dependent on one another and certainly dependent upon new life in order to continue. And so where did new life come from? It came from a female. And in early times, ancient times, people didn't really understand how it was that babies got born, just that women produced them. And this life-giving force was also seen replicated in the earth and how the earth goes to sleep and then it comes back and it regenerates and it gives us new growth and gives us, really sustains us, gives us everything we need. And so it makes sense that there would be a sense of this great feminine, this creative energy that produces and gives us our life-giving forces and fertility and the creation of all that we need to sustain us. So it made sense that the early people would revere that as a model and as an archetype. And that went on for several thousands of years. And of course we know that most of the cultures at that time were matriarchies. It wasn't really until people figured out that the male had something to do with this procreation. That's when it all changed. That's when men started taking power. Because they knew that it was also about them. And that that child was in fact theirs, not just belonging to the woman or to the tribe. So I'm not going to go in that direction too far today. That's an interesting story too. And then the ancient Greeks, as we became more scientific and so on, they began to split up things. And so they split up this notion of the goddess as the one great pillar goddess as such. And they split them into a lot of different aspects of the goddess. So all the aspects are there, but they're split now into the different goddesses that we know today. And I also want to just mention that, I'm going to maybe tell you a couple stories and the things that I've learned and studied about the myths, but the myths have changed over time and from culture to culture. They get passed around from different cultures, different cultural overlays are put on them, and they come out in a different form somewhere else. So when we talk about the origins of particular deities, truthfully, they're an evolution and a compilation, usually, of a lot of different ones, and they're just the ones that we know about. So some of them may have different stories or different myths that go along with some of the gods and goddesses. So in the classical Greek versions, around the 5th to 4th century BC, these were the primary. Now there's lots and lots and lots, we know, lots and lots of gods and goddesses, but these were the primary goddesses in classical times. I'm going to focus on those today. And I'm going to go into each one in more depth. But we have Athena, goddess of wisdom, goddess of strategy and war. She's the only goddess you'll see that's in the Greek goddesses. She's the only one you'll see that's dressed in battle gear. Then we have Demeter, and I mentioned Demeter before, the grieving mother. I'll go into each of these a little bit more. The grieving mother who loses her daughter to Hades. Hera, who is the queen. She's Zeus's wife. And Zeus is king of Olympus, and so she is queen. So she represents the queen archetype. And then there's Aphrodite, probably the best known, because she's still so alive and well in our culture today. Aphrodite is known as the goddess of love and beauty. And I didn't put love in there because I think she's more the goddess of beauty and sexuality and creativity. But I'm not so sure how much love, because generally she didn't love the men she was with. She had a good time with them, but she didn't really commit herself to love. Then there's Artemis, one of my favorites, who's a nature lover and lives away from the city, away from all the hubbub, away from all the politics, away from most people, and enjoys living on her own with her nymphs and hunting in the forest. Oops, sorry. Then there's Hestia, and when you go to Greece and you see all the gods and goddesses and statues and everything, Hestia is one you very rarely see, and that's because she's the goddess of the hearth and the home. And I like to think of it as the center of all of us, the soul. She's the soulful one, and she's not out and about. There's not a lot of stories about Hestia because she wasn't part of the everyday life. She was the one who was tending the fire, who was meditating, who was wanted things peaceful and quiet, and keeping a home where someone can come and have their soul renewed. And then there's Persephone, who was the young maiden, you have to remember, and the innocent one, who is then taken to Hades. Some versions, most versions say that she was abducted. The most current versions say that she was abducted. There is an earlier version that says that she was a young maiden and she was very curious about life and she was kind of happy to go. And that, of course, over time, as I said, over time, that got changed as the culture has changed. So that it wasn't so much that she went willingly and gladly, but that she was abducted by Hades. And in the ancient times, these were, primal living forces for people, not like concepts that we have today. We're sitting in this room, we're discussing, we're talking about them, you can read a book about them. But in ancient times, they were very real, very palpable, and experienced by the people, embodied. So I divided up the goddesses into different categories, the independent goddesses and the more traditional goddesses. This is a picture of the Parthenon. I'm not familiar with that. This, of course, is the temple to Athena. And I have a story I want to tell you about this, about myself. I went to Greece the first time on my honeymoon with Ed. And the second time I went was when we led a group. And so it was the first time we'd ever led this group, and it was early, we'd just gotten there and so on. And so a number of us, 4 or 5 of us, went out and had dinner, and then after dinner we decided to go for dessert. And if you've ever been in Europe, people eat late at night as it is, so it was, it was getting up. And so we had dessert, and that was great. Oh, let's go to another place and have another drink. Okay, so we did that, and it was getting late. It was like midnight at least, and everybody in the group was having a great time. I was having a great time too, but I realized that we were going to be starting the next day. We had to be dressed and ready to go at 8 o'clock in the morning, and it was now midnight. And so I mentioned that to the group, and I said, we have to be up early, it's getting kind of late, maybe we should call it a night. Well, I was a party pooper. Everybody was having such a good time. Why did I want to stop? And, well, you go ahead if you want to go, and all that. So I was feeling kind of, not so good. And the next day, one of the things that we did in the morning was to go up to the Parthenon. Now, to get to the Parthenon, you have to walk through some narrow streets, and then you have to, when you finally get there, you have to climb up all these stairs. It was not easy. You see the base there. That's way up high too. Those of you who've been, I know some of you have gone to Greece with us,
Highest point in the city. It's the highest point in the city.
Yeah. And so, so you have to climb a number of stairs to get up there, and they're like this high. Each step is really high. Anyway, so I got up there, and I was still feeling kind of from the night before, well, am I really a party pooper? All that. And I got up there, and I saw, again, the second time in my life, I saw the Parthenon that was built. It's huge, it's humongous, it's tall, and all the pieces of it are all around. And this was built to honor Athena. Now, who was Athena? She was the practical one. She was the one who said everything in moderation. Right? She was taking care of everybody, not just herself. Okay? And I said, wait a minute, I'm okay. Just a quick story of how these things can be used. So, okay. So she was a goddess of wisdom, and she did carry a lot of wisdom about such matters, and about using restraint instead of being rash. She did preside over battle strategy. She was known to be incredibly good at that kind of thinking. So you might think, well, maybe you know an Athena person who, when you're going on a camping trip, she's the one who organizes everything and has you know, the little packets of what you need, and she's very practical about those kinds of things. She also presided over domestic arts. People don't generally know her for that, but she did. Weaving in particular, and pottery and metalworking. And she was basically the protector of the people. And she definitely sided with the hero warriors, especially during the Trojan War. So she was both rational but compassionate. Unlike other, now you might think of the god of war as Ares. But Ares was just bloodthirsty. He just loved the battle. Any chance, he was ready and wanting to go there. Athena, not so much. Athena would wait and try to use diplomacy and negotiation before she would use force, and force would only be the last resort. So I'll tell you a story about Athena and her wisdom. So way back in ancient times, cities would give their the name of their city would be after a patron, a goddess patron. And so they were trying to figure out which god or goddess they wanted to have as their patron. And it came down to Poseidon and Athena. And so Poseidon, if you remember, Poseidon's kind of a energetic guy, very enthusiastic about everything he does, very big in a sense, and big presence. And so he said, "Oh, ladies and gentlemen, I'll tell you what. I mean, if you want me to be your patron, this is what I'm going to give you." And he produced right out of the Acropolis a beautiful stream of fresh running water, and the people were just amazed. Wow. Because now when we use our fortifications against our enemies, we'll have fresh water. We won't have to worry about bringing it in. We can survive. This is incredible. So then Athena stands up and just her a little. She says, "Well, if you choose me, I would gladly give you this." And she points, and there's an olive tree. They've never had olives. Oh my goodness! Now they can make their own oil. They can have olives and they can make their own oil. And they don't have to import that now. Wow, incredible. Oh, Poseidon, wait. He says, no, he says, "I have another gift for you." And suddenly, coming running down from the mountainside is an incredible stallion, a big, white, gorgeous stallion, mane flowing behind, tail flowing behind. And the people, they've never seen this creature before. They're just amazed and incredulous at this incredible creature. Well, he must just be the most powerful god in the world if he could give us this. So Athena sits for a moment. And she finally stands up again. And she reaches behind her robes and she says, "Ladies and gentlemen, I have a gift for you." She stands forward and she raises up. "I give you the bridle." And of course, now we have Athens, which is named after Athena. Again, she believed that what was best for all was always the better choice. Everything in moderation. So you know whom I think of? When I think of Athena, I think of Nancy Pelosi. Right? I know, I believe in my heart that she's been wanting, let me just say, she's used a lot of moderation in her approach to the impeachment of Trump. I think that she had to hold back a lot of her own wishes and desires, and the pressure that she was getting from so many people has been getting. Elizabeth Warren might be another. These are people who are leaders in their own right among men. These are the women in our culture who are standing side by side and having the same kind of power, and given, because of who they are, given the power. Another one of my favorites is Artemis. She is the goddess of the hunt and the moon. goddess of wilderness. She's the protector of the young and of all living things. She has concentration, the ability of concentration, to be able to aim at something that she wants and to get it. She never missed. She never missed. She would be what we might call the tomboy archetype. From the time she was a little girl, she'd always, what do you want? What do you want? I'll give you anything you want, her father Zeus would say. And she would say, all I want is a short tunic and a bow and arrow. Let me go. She's always quick to help, and she's decisive. She doesn't shilly-shally around with decisions. This is what needs to be done. Let's do it. You probably know some people like this, or maybe you are like this yourself in some ways. Someone who really loves and gets her nurturing from being in nature, feels safe in nature, feels like she's part of it and of it. Not particularly interested in the concerns of the greater culture. Maybe you've had some of those qualities yourself. I have some of them in there. And she gets outraged at people doing bad things to other people. And she will punish. She might be emotionally distant, aloof, you might call her an aloof woman. But she's self-confident. She might be on the front lines of the protest movement because she's upset about wrong things being done to people. And then there's Hestia. As I said, very little is written about her, and very little is depicted of her in Greece, but some of you might recognize yourselves. She's the one who spends a lot of time doing things like yoga, taking yoga classes, doing yoga every morning at home, doing her own prayer or meditation on a regular basis. Might spend a couple of weeks at a retreat center where she can just contemplate or do mindfulness meditation or yoga, a yoga retreat. She's very soulful, she's very inward, loves to create a beautiful space around herself and for her guests who come. One way I heard it put was, if you're the kind of person when you eat alone at home, you like to set the table and have it look nice, that's probably a Hestia quality. If you're just eating out of the boxes that are in the refrigerator, then you're probably not. One thing I want to say also about the archetypes is none of us are one of these. All of us have a wide variety of these archetypes in us, and they get activated at different times. And so if we can start thinking about ourselves as the recreators of the myths and the archetypes, and we can catch ourselves, then we can sometimes change or augment what we're doing and how we're doing it. Now, all of those goddesses I just talked about were all basically virgin goddesses, even though we call them virgin goddesses. They may have had love affairs, but they were never of the relationship, if that makes sense. They never bonded in the same way that we think.
Your question back here.
I got it. These other ones, however, did, and this is Hera. And you probably remember Hera's rage more than anything because her husband, Zeus, was continuously having relationships with other other goddesses and mortals. And she was always, for the most part, pretty angry about that. She is the woman behind the man. You know, a lot of powerful men in our culture or worldwide have a woman behind them who's also very ambitious and gets her needs met through the relationship with the husband. So she's pushing her husband to be helpful. She's pushing her husband to be successful, and maybe even planning and plotting right along with him. I think sometimes of Lady Macbeth, right, scheming with her husband for power. Consequently, she defends marriage because she knows how painful it is to have an unfaithful husband. So she herself was very faithful, but she never forgot an injury. If someone offended her in some way, she would always find a way at some point to get back. There's a cute story about Hera having a big ball, and she invited a number of people, and one of the people she invited was a woman. I cannot remember her name, but so this woman would start out on her way to the ball, but then she would remember that she had forgotten to put a piece of jewelry on, so she'd go back to her house. And then she would get almost to the ball, and she remembered, oh, she didn't put on all the makeup she wanted. So she would go back to her house. And this kept going on and on and on. And finally, just as the party was breaking up, she arrived. And Hera was upset that she had come so late, felt disrespected, and so on. Somebody smiled and talked to me, but she knows the end of the story. So she decided to turn this woman into a turtle, so that she would always have her house with her at all times. Oh, let's go back to that. I find that in my work as a psychotherapist, I've come across, of course, the issue of infidelity. And whether it's the person who has been unfaithful or whether it's the person who has been betrayed, it's always very complicated. And all those times that Zeus was being unfaithful, Hera forgave him every time. There was never any consequence till the end. And I'm not going to tell that story now, but I did recently discover a story where Hera basically fooled Zeus into thinking she was going to be having an affair or something, and then he decided, oh, I think maybe it's time for us to be faithful with one another. But questions that come up, and for Hera, it seemed a lot of the time in the stories, and of course, you know, they're just stories that have been passed on, and a lot of details are left out, but it often seems like it's her honor that she feels has been offended. And I never had a feeling that it's about her love for Zeus. And so these are things that I explore when it comes up in the therapy room. You know, is this because when there's been an infidelity, the offended person can feel like, oh, my love, you know, he doesn't love me anymore. I say he or she doesn't love me anymore. My partner doesn't love me anymore. Or doesn't love me as much as they love this other person. What does this other person have that I don't have? There's all these questions that come up. But there's also this other piece about humiliation. I feel humiliated. This woman that, you know, this other person knows that you've been unfaithful to me, and that is a humiliation to me. So it's important to figure out what the emotions are and where they're coming from. And also to remind them that it is possible, even after an infidelity, it is possible to have reconciliation and to end up having a very good, strong, loving marriage if it's confronted correctly. And Demeter is another archetype that I see, I have seen frequently in my work. It is the mother archetype. Most of us in here, many of us in here are mothers. We all have mothers. We all know mothers. So we kind of know what that means when we say the archetype. You know, we used to say what mother and apple pie were the things that people would go off to war for. The mother archetype of the nurturer, the caretaker. And in this case with Demeter, she also is the goddess of agriculture. She was the one that was believed to bring us springtime and all of the flowers and fruits and vegetables and our sustenance, our way of life, our ability to survive, all came from the goddess Demeter. Then we know the story, many of us, I hope, know the story of Persephone, her daughter. And I'll talk more about that in the next slide. But together they represent the cycle of life and death. Because Persephone, her young daughter, was a beautiful maiden and very innocent. And then she went out and played with her friends and romped in the meadow and picked wildflowers. And suddenly the earth opened up and out came Hades. And he takes her to the underworld. And she's very grievous, and she doesn't want to be there, and she's very unhappy. And in the meantime, her mother, Demeter, is searching for her and crying and in terrible despair because she's lost her daughter, can't find her. And I won't go into that whole story, but this grieving at the loss, the innocence of the lost child, is also something that has come up in therapy a lot. And those of you who are therapists know, I hope you know what I'm talking about. But the mother, we all have issues with mothers in some way or another, positive or negative, right? And maybe a lot of each. But the individuation process for a mother can be very difficult. And some mothers don't want to let go. And in the story, it sort of sounds like maybe Demeter wasn't ready to let go of her daughter, more so than her daughter was ready. Her daughter maybe was ready. And so we see this in the helicopter moms, right, who are continually watching over their kids and making sure they're scheduled every minute of the day so they don't have an opportunity for a single independent thought. And the child, the reaction of the young, especially teenager, how they may rebel and may have to have their own life and do their own thing. And so with Persephone, we see, if we work with the image of her being abducted and going to the underworld, she then, in this sense, she has experienced a huge loss herself, and she has descended into the underworld. And now, this is an archetype that's very useful in working with sexual abuse. Any kind of trauma, really, in a sense. But what happens is when someone goes through a trauma, it is a loss of innocence. Okay, even if it's not such that, oh, I believe I'll never get in a car crash. It's that I was just driving down the street. I was doing my thing. I was just being a normal human being. All of a sudden, I'm in this terrible car crash, and now I'm in a hospital and all this. So even though we know that car crashes happen in our heads, we lose our innocence in the fact that it happened to me. And it happened to me, when I was just going around kind of innocent or unknown, and suddenly this horrible thing happened. And I never knew what it was going to be like, and I never knew how much trouble it was going to be to recover and so on. The descent is difficult. And the loss of innocence, we see it so much in my work with veterans. And military training is pretty tough, but it can't possibly fully prepare any of us for what happens on the battlefield. And so our troops come home and they are traumatized by this very thing. It's a loss of innocence. It's a belief, there's this belief that I'm so well trained and we're the best military in the world and we're going to win and I'm going to save lives, and then it doesn't happen. And maybe you're the only survivor of the unit, or whatever it might be. But there's a loss of innocence. There has to be. And any time, really, any time you have that thrust out of the normal and into something that's abnormal and difficult to negotiate, there's a loss associated with that. And then in this case, of course, the Demeter was searching for her. And she was searching for a way out. And of course, you probably remember the story, that finally Zeus gets involved and negotiates with Hades, and they decide that because Demeter is so upset and she has stopped producing, she stopped any growing thing from growing because she was so preoccupied and so overcome with her grief, that the food just isn't growing. And so they decided that they better give Persephone back to her, and so she can come back, but she has eaten some pomegranate seeds while she's there, and there's some divine rule about that, I guess, and it meant she couldn't leave forever. She had to come back for a certain time every year. And so that, of course, is winter. When she goes back down to Hades, for the time she has to spend down there, that's when we have winter. However, she also transformed from the innocent little girl who didn't want to go to Hades. Once she was there, she developed and created the role of being the queen of the underworld. She took her place. She made something out of what happened to her. So her role was to help and assist the dead as they came into Hades. And what a beautiful, precious role to take. And so she's an incredible example of what can happen when we transform that loss of innocence and then reclaim a new role, a new person, a new path. We work with this a lot with our veterans, and it has to do with accepting the path of the spiritual warrior. And of course, the spiritual warrior is male, female, and can be anybody. And so even if you have somebody who's a rape victim, you can talk with them about the spiritual warrior archetype as a way of persevering and moving on and moving beyond.
Didn't she also end up having a very respectful and passionate relationship with Hades?
Yes, exactly. She overcame her fear, her terror, and all of that. Of course, as I said, there's many different versions, okay? Because she doesn't stay down there all, the whole year. So she also loves her mother and wants to be with her mother. But yes, there are stories like that. Yeah. She found her place, and that's the key for when we're working with people.
Could it be interpreted as a mother who's holding on to her daughter for too long? The daughter compromising? I mean, there is...
Oh, yeah. Like the woman who gets married and moves to a house that's a couple doors away or around the corner, or who calls her mother 6 times a day. Is it for the daughter? Is it for the mother? Yeah. Right, exactly. Joe?
I'm curious. I'm trying to understand the comparison between the female goddesses and the male. Are there actually complements to the female goddesses, or are the men really sort of asymmetrical? They have their niche and quite different. My current niece doesn't seem to have a female counterpart, but Apollo and maybe Athena are similar. But some of them are and some of them aren't. In relation to anima and animus, are they complementary, or are they?
I don't think that there's any direct correlations. All these qualities that I'm talking about are they're qualities that we all, male and female, have, as well as the qualities of the goddesses, or the gods. We all have some of those qualities as well. We're multifaceted, and we're masculine and feminine, and we do carry a lot of the same energies as the gods and the goddesses. All of us. I'm sorry, I didn't really answer your. Was there a question or?
I was wondering if there could be.
I don't know direct parallels. I don't know direct parallels. Just that some of the qualities overlap.
Mars, compared to the woman warrior.
Right.
There was a difference.
There's a difference, right?
Yeah, but
right.
Maybe the others not to the same extent.
No. Anybody want to?
The Greeks didn't really have the same thing. The thing you see in Hinduism, where you had pairs of husband-wife pairs of deities that governed the thing. The Greeks didn't do it like that. They would have you'd have very specific gender. This god does this goddess does that. And they didn't really have a overlapping sort of thing.
But they had relationships with each other,
yeah,
but
yeah.
not.
And they were often they weren't necessarily always cooperative.
Right. In fact, I've often noted that it's really interesting that at least in the Greek pantheon, we don't have examples really of really good relationships between men and women, successful marriages. Unless you go to some of the other more minor deities, and then you can see some of that. Mhm.
Another general question.
Mhm.
Can you say more about how in ancient times we lived and embodied the different archetypes?
Just that they weren't just concepts. They, when events happened, they were attributed to the god or the goddess. When a person was making a decision, they would go and they would pray. And they would ask for advice. And so it was a living relationship. Maybe more like in some religions today, where the people go to church and go to to pray. But it's much more part of their being than we're sitting here studying it. It's kind of outside of us. But
There was a thought like your feelings of erotic passion were Aphrodite or Eros.
yes,
Your wrath was Ares. It wasn't like I'm participating in this thing. No, that's what that god is. So you're.
It's possessed me. The god or goddess has possessed me and made me do it. Right.
Push it even further. When a figure appeared in a dream, they interpreted it as an actual visit from that power. It wasn't a symbol. It wasn't an image. It wasn't manufactured by our imagination. But it was a genuine visit from the dead or from a deity that came to that person in sleep.
That's how they interpreted it or believed it.
And of course, then also they didn't only pray; they went and they looked for answers. So answers came in dreams and in visions, and when they consulted oracles, they were talking to the god or the goddess who was giving them a direct answer.
And they would even have rites where you would let them be possessed by these beings, or you would invoke them to come in through you.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, that's probably a good example.
Yeah. You might, if you're going down the battlefield, you might want Ares with you, but certainly you want Athena with you.
I remember going to the art museum here at Smith and seeing tiny figurines from, I don't know what period, but they were tiny little carved figurines, and they were images of young girls in their costumes, because they were Artemis, so the children of Artemis, or Artemis baby tomboys in training. And I just wondered if you knew any more.
Well, she's the myth, the nymphs. She
Yeah.
lived with the nymphs, which were like sisters to her. Yeah, but the bear is one of her.
One of her creatures.
Yeah.
But my understanding was that the real children went into these sort of Artemis camps and were
That may be.
initiated.
I love that.
There are all sorts of different.
I'm sorry, you heard that
I've heard
also?
the same.
Yeah.
That they were the bear cubs of Artemis, and they would play, just be free and do whatever they wanted.
Yeah.
The girls.
Sort of like a girl camp.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So much fun.
I like that. Yeah.
Most of the deities had mystery practices like this for children, for adults, for people throughout the life stage, where they would sing hymns to the deity, they would dress in costume just as you're describing, they would dance, they would perform the myths, they would actively embody through arts and through communal ritual as much as possible the stories and practices of that deity to bring it into themselves. Our word enthusiasm is ancient Greek. It means God in us, and theos. They were working to awaken the archetypes so strongly that they were living presences in them.
Well, in the pilgrimage bibliography that Jean Shinoda Bowden book, right? Goddesses in every woman. So for Artemis, it was actually celebrating with this totem, I guess is great, with bear cubs. That adolescence isn't something like with Persephone to, just get over it, we can't stay innocent forever. No, it was that you can be gender, not just bending or non-conforming, but that you choose as an individual how you're going to be part of a collective without needing a pair. You don't have to become of another. You can be the adolescent who is wise, the adolescent who is intuitive and who tracks a collective of your choice. So it's your seeking an extended family as a quality that's to be admired, and not saying, but you forget your family, or why don't you want to have children, right? This is the age we've come into. We don't need any more billions of children. Maybe this is a good thing, right? We don't have room for too many more people here, right? So maybe this is a good quality that isn't something that shows naivete or selfishness or all the judgment about it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. All the judgment.
Yeah.
Joseph Campbell is famous for saying myth is what other people's religions are about. So, in our own Savior Christian, is the belief in Christ a myth in the Greek sense, in which we go and pray in front of Christ, or we pray in front of Moses or Buddha? Is that a fair comparison to what the Greeks believe in, that their myth, their gods are similar to our gods or myths? Or is it very different, a contemporary belief in what we call a myth compared to their myths?
I don't know that it's that different today.
Yeah, for them these were very living buildings.
Well, for a lot of people, Christ
exactly in the same sort of way.
So it is. That's a fair
I didn't get that.
So that it's just it's as living a real thing for a working class Greek person and, like, say, a very Catholic peasant in Mexico. If you just as real, like that sort of thing.
That's what I'm asking. It's on that level of intensity or existential.
Yes, definitely. So, I'm going to read to you. No, I'm not, because this is Elric stuff. I'm going to read to you an article that I published in the journal Pilgrimage, probably 2001-ish, around in there. But it's about a trip that I led, an all-women's group that I led to Greece, and how and the encounter with the goddesses. In the year 2000, I led a women's journey to Greece called In Search of the Goddess. We were 7 women exploring their souls for the feminine archetypes, those original and primal persona that live in all of us. Traveling to ancient sacred sites and inducing the goddess energies with prayer and song and intent. The sky was always blue, the temperature perfect. We traveled to islands, mountain villages, and tiny fishing coves. Greece, as always, was mysterious and magical. 7 women seeking ourselves, searching myths and stories to uncover the many facets of all of the classical goddesses and how they take turns reflecting the multiple dimensions of our own psyches. When people ask me afterward, how was your trip? I found myself hesitating at the question, taking an extra long breath, conflicted between honesty and my internal expectation of obligatory exuberance and accolades. I wanted to use words like fantastic and wonderful, but the truth is, it was hard, painfully difficult. It was not a trip, a tour, or a vacation. Had it been prophetic or merely intuitive that I had consciously used only the word journey to describe and promote this adventure? For it was truly a mythic journey of self-discovery. The goddesses were there in all their aspects, dark as well as light. Each in our own way experienced them in many forms in ourselves and in each other, and found conflict and confusion, guidance and wisdom. I began the journey months ahead with my Athena persona, rational, strategic, ambitious, keen, intelligent, the warrior goddess. I carefully outlined our itinerary and gathered together this little tribe of women who were drawn to it. I had made all the preparations for flights and hotels. I was ready with stories and poems to read, guidebooks full of practical information, and copied pages of history and myth to share with my travelers. Each day was to unfold magically in a new, exciting adventure of self-discovery and self-expression as we explored the many aspects of the goddess archetypes and how they all live in our experiences as women. We were to be amazed and impassioned, delighted and inspired by the people, the music, the landscape, and the sacred sites. We were to encourage and support each other on the heroine's journey of transformation. I left my home full of expectation. I left as a giddy girl, Persephone perhaps. I was looking for playmates, with a few incidental concerns, but mostly confident and willing to ride with whatever came. I left looking for friendship and connection with other like-minded and like-spirited women. I left naive. I had been to Greece many times, once on my honeymoon, and several times since as a journey leader with my husband and partner. Each group has been different, of course, depending on the personalities involved. This was my first solo and the first all-female trip, so I felt safe. Safe? Wow. I had studied the classical gods and goddesses and their myths. I had taught them and conducted workshops. I know their strengths and weaknesses. In the stories and myths, they tangle with each other and with humans just as we do. They can be vengeful and cold, petty and jealous, just as well as they can be kind and compassionate. None of them are safe in their entirety, each of them great as an ally, formidable as a foe. At the airport, my girlish excitement continued as I met the women I had only spoken to on the telephone. This was before we had Zoom and Skype and cell phones and all that. Most were older than I, some by quite a bit, but their excitement was evident too. We made a warm circle with lots of friendly eye contact. I explained that this was an adventure with many unknowns and possible surprises. We talked about being Amazons traveling together, capable, confident, adaptable, and ready. Long before social media and Skype, I had planned for all of us to sit while we waited for our flight, as my travelers had on previous trips, to share the meaning of this journey for each of us, our hopes, our needs, our fears, what we were leaving at home, and why we were called away. But some of us were hungry. Others needed a bathroom or a magazine. No sooner had we come together than we fractured apart. I was disappointed, but I wanted to allow my travelers' comforts, to let them know that I would take care of them. Bells and whistles might have gone off then, but I was too deafened by my desire to be the all-giving Demeter to hear them. I did manage to squeeze in a poem called The Charge of the Goddesses, but halfway through it, the plane began to board, and my listeners jumped up and got in line. Again, I was saddened that we couldn't do more, go deeper. Again, I wanted to reassure, keep comfortable, make happy. After all, these were older gals, a lot like my own mother, not as used to flying as I am. It was my job to take care of them, and we would. As a mother, I know that taking care does not necessarily mean giving people what they want. As a daughter, however, I am more confused. Caretaking a parent doesn't seem as negotiable. We are more inclined to please in the moment than concern ourselves with future outcomes. Thus, I took flight, with a vague sense that my own demons were looking nearby, had booked passage a few seats away. I began slipping ever more deeply into the world of Persephone, the adolescent girl ready to blossom, kept young and innocent and dependent by her mother, Demeter, all-powerful, who calls the shots, does not let her daughter grow into the queen she is destined to be. It was a smooth crossing. We landed a bit weary but renewed by having arrived. Athena's clear thinking came back to me, reminding me of the procedure. Customs, money exchange, taxis, freshen up, meet in the lobby for a quick introduction to the magical possibilities, and then head out for lunch in the Plaka, the old Athens city of meandering streets, tavernas, and open markets. It was all pretty simple, and I felt my confidence renewed. Now that we were here, we could dig in, and I could guide my travelers toward an inner rebirth of the sacred family. I could pluck at their birth orders and be midwife for the beautiful souls that had willingly made this mythic blessing. I could have. It became clear from that very first meeting, however, that Demeter was strong among us, that she didn't need birthing, that she was aggressive and demanding. And Athena was there, and the others too, reserved and rational, showing off her intellectual skills, challenging me to a game of wits. I was caught off guard, the maiden's drowsiness. I did my best to listen with a supportive ear, to respond with an open heart. I wanted to unite, not alienate. I wanted my children to get along, but they began poking and bickering and looking to me to take sides. As the days melted together with statues and stories, museums and temples, I was confronted again and again. At times, it wasn't really all that bad, but at times, Artemis, goddess of the hunt, wild, courageous, independent, and unconstrained by convention, would challenge Hera for control and adherence to rules. Her love of the excitement of a good sparring match was sometimes trying to those less inclined. And then she would disappear into the forest, unavailable to the rest of us. We were such diverse women that group cohesion and consensus seemed nearly impossible. What was good for some was not good for others. Sometimes Hera's rage and need to blame others when her unexpressed needs weren't met overcame the compassion of the other goddesses and activated in our group. Tensions were high. I feared blame for everyone's dissatisfaction, though at the same time I knew that I was not responsible. Here, the fragile adolescent part of me felt overpowered by the more mature and thus more powerful goddess archetypes coming out of my powers. Persephone is passive against her mother's power, and the power of surrogate mothers as well. She dares not act too boldly, stand up too tall. Underneath my attempts to maintain goodwill, I felt angry and scared. I had traveled here before, I knew what I was doing, and I was doing it fairly well. I relied on the Demeter part of myself, usually fairly strong, to nurture the others in an effort to counteract the helplessness I felt. But self-doubt crept in. I felt my judgment, my leadership being thwarted, questioned, undermined, as individual needs and differences surfaced in requests, suggestions, and criticism. I began struggling to be the parent when I felt so like the child whose domineering elders will not let her into performance. I became dominated by the Demeter-Persephone myth, trying to maintain connections by being all-giving, and feeling all the while Persephone's powerlessness, her anger and disappointment. The Demeter won't let her grow up. I was both mother, the responsible caring leader, and daughter, vulnerable and frightened. But as the story goes, Persephone is thrust into the underworld of despair and confusion, because despite her mother's apron strings, the universe pushes. Right? Her fate is to grow, and her first step is to detach. Cut the cable, be set afloat on an uncharted sea. I had fallen into that darkness with no anchor, no one at the other end to catch me up. I had been thrown into my own childhood encounters with the goddess and chased into my own dark underworld by the overly critical, perfection-demanding, unseeing mother archetype. I feared that what I had to offer was not seen or understood. I was longing for validation. It was a stress-induced condition. I hadn't had it in years, but it was painful. I was having trouble sleeping and eating. I was afraid that if the others knew, they would be upset. I wanted them to see me as strong and in charge and not feel sorry for me or feel burdened with caring for me. At once I felt the split, that Demeter will fall into her own dark rage and despair if she thinks I will leave her in some way, and that Persephone, my uninitiated charges, needed me. It was then that we visited Eleusis, a place where the ancient Eleusinian mysteries, with the story of Persephone's descent into the underworld, was reenacted in a powerful ritual. The participants, as initiates, were said to be forever changed by their experience of the death and rebirth encounter. You all pretty much know the Eleusinian mysteries. I'm not going into too much depth, but It was something that was reenacted thousands of years after the story of Persephone and Demeter. As I wandered the ruins of the sanctuary of Demeter, trying to imagine its original splendor, I prayed for guidance and for release from the powerful hold this myth had on me. I knew I needed to activate the other goddess archetypes that reside in my psyche, and I needed help. Later that day, we walked through the old Athens marketplace, rows and rows of tiny shops selling wares of all kinds. I felt how tired I was. Tired of walking, tired of catering, always being on, out of patience, out of steam. I was exhausted with trying to keep my own center, my own self-respect, while at the same time trying to attend to each of my travelers. I entered one last shop at someone's request. There I came face to face with a large, white, smooth, soft-faced statue of Athena. She was standing at rest, her shield at one side, her spear at the other. Her helmet was up. She was open and unguarded, showing her compassion and warmth. I reached up to her, touched her hand, and stood for a moment gazing at her, praying for courage, asking for strength. Suddenly, I did not feel alone, as if she had said, "Do not fear, I will be with you." I was able to breathe easily for the first time in days. It was as if a spell had been broken. When we reached the island of Mykonos, I determined that I didn't have to be alone. I would call home for some support and perspective. But as fate or necessity would have it, I only reached an answering machine. Remember those days? As I left my message, tears began to flow, slowly at first, and then near sobbing. Bottled up anger and sadness poured out. I found myself praying to Artemis, whose birthplace we were going to visit the next day. Help me, Goddess. Help me find my direction. Give me strength and vision. Help me see what I must see. The message that came back to me was, take care of yourself now. Take up the goal. It was evident that this endeavor had become a psycho-mythic journey for me. The Persephone part of my psyche had been opened wide. She had been longing for her mother to come and soothe her. Now, with Athena's encouragement and support and guidance from Artemis, guardian of young women, she could claim her place as a queen in her own right. One of the women of our tribe had a strong Hestia side, a priestess of sorts. With her help, I created a sacred circle with candles, prayers, songs, and personal sharing. I felt at home again, doing what I loved, what I wanted us to do together. When two of the women decided suddenly to leave the circle to take photos before the sun disappeared beneath the sea, I felt myself in danger again. I feared Hera's outrage from some if I allowed them to leave the group. I feared offending Hestia by ending the group prematurely. I feared disappointing Persephone, the dominant personality of one of them, or enraging Artemis, the dominant part of the other, if I required them to stay. So I breathed slowly and remembered Artemis. What would she do? What did I want to do? I decided to continue the circle without them and invite the others to share their feelings about them leaving. And it went very well. That evening I prepared for the next day's visit to a small, uninhabited island of Delos, where it is said that Artemis was born. Artemis, the renowned huntress whose arrows always hit their mark, set firm boundaries and protected them well. The next morning, I spoke to the group about the importance to each of us and the group as a whole of the Artemis archetype. I encouraged them and myself to claim this journey in a more personal and independent way. In my words was the message that we each needed to claim the Amazon spirit of freedom and self-determination outside the safety of the group. They could choose to stop looking to me to make it better, and I could stop looking to them for approval. Each of us could take responsibility for what we had come here for. Not knowing how well I had been understood, I headed the group down the narrow, winding, whitewashed streets to the ferry. I spent most of my time on the island wandering alone, among the ruins of shrines and altars to various deities. I noticed others did too, only occasionally crossing paths. Upon our return, it seemed we each went separate ways, or by twos, to lunch and shopping. I was now aware of a dynamic that had been haunting me. I could see the hooks that caused me to give up my power over and over again. I began to breathe deeply each time I felt them, to pause and ask myself what I needed or wanted, what my gut was telling me to do, what Artemis would do. I determined to stop trying to manage my physical symptoms myself and get medical help at the next stop. Samos is a good-sized mountainous island off the western coast of Turkey. It is the home of the great Heraon, the temple of Hera, that was originally 4 times the size of the Parthenon. Can you imagine it? Only half the group went to this wonderful site. The rest split off to follow their instincts and personal needs. One even decided to stay on the island and join us later in Athens. Perhaps the Artemis archetype had opened in them after all. Our next stop was Delphi. The tiny town nestled in rich, luscious mountains and known as the home of the great oracle. We went by way of the Gulf of Corinth and crossed by ferry. With the sun going down over purple mountains and the wind in our faces, I taught the group the powerful Amazon call. Our heads tilted back, tongues wagging, we formed a howling chorus, and I finally felt fully in charge. I had been sleeping better and eating, and my energy was coming back. I began to spend some time alone with each traveler, talking about what was emerging for them. One of the women with a strong Athena streak was an avid reader. She was full of historical details and interesting observations. She was also a great navigator and surprisingly good at learning Greek. Another had the infectious, innocent free spirit of Persephone and even managed to buy a silver-plated pomegranate, the only thing the goddess had eaten in the underworld, and which sealed her fate of having to return there for part of every year. I began saying no freely to unreasonable requests and felt no ambivalence. I made clear decisions without feeling coerced and stated them firmly. I was unfazed by others' demands and stayed my course. This is not to say that it all went smoothly. We received incorrect directions, ran into bumper-to-bumper traffic, and couldn't get near our hotel by car because of closed-off streets. I felt sad for my pilgrims, but not responsible. These were the unexpected trials I had warned about that first day in the airport, a part of the adventure that required us to hone our resilience and fortitude. After a long afternoon drive back to Athens, we finally arrived at the car rental station. Suddenly, from the back of the van, I heard a whoop of the Amazon call, a statement of victory and delight. And then we were all whooping, and I knew that I was not alone. Something was different for all of us, some unnameable shift in our identities, an opening, a deepening, and embracing. We left for home the next day. Once in JFK, we had the usual hustle of baggage claims, customs, and a rush to meet our connecting flights. Our goodbyes were rushed and scattered, and I felt sad. I had come to love and respect each of these women as the incredible individuals they are, with their unique complexities and personal foibles. I had seen the goddesses in each of them, and they were powerful, amazing, and formidable. I was both in awe and terror of them. They were my teachers, my competitors, my helpmates, and my foes. People have asked me if I will ever do this kind of journey again. When I think about it, I am reminded of my experiences birthing my 2 children. They were both long, painful labors, resulting in weeks of uncomfortable recovery. It hurts to remember them sometimes, but the truth is I would go through them all over and over again for the wonderful treasures that came from them. Today, I feel wiser, more confident, more content than ever before. Thank you, goddesses, one and all. So, now I'd like to hear a little bit more from you all. Anything that we've talked about that you're relating to, or your own work and how you use the archetypes in your own work?
Yeah, I appreciate your talk. it reminds me, I'll try to make this brief, is I saw images on the television the last day or so, 18 or 19-year-old American soldiers getting on planes heading toward the Middle East, 82nd Airborne, and I was reminded of the Greek soldier Xenophon, who he wrote a very famous, it's called Adactix, I can't pronounce it, but he wrote it right after the Peloponnesian War, and he was part of, it relates to what I'm talking about, he was part of a Greek, basically Spartan mercenary army that fought with the Persians. His brother Cyrus was rebelling against his other brother, and they were totally defeated, although the Greeks won their battle, but Cyrus was killed in the battle. So the story was there were 10,000 Greek warriors in the middle of present-day Iraq. They were totally surrounded by the Persian army. They were all going to be slaves or just murdered. They tried to negotiate with the Persians, but the Persians killed all their officers in the negotiation. They were all despondent, sad. So Xenophon had a dream. And in the dream, Zeus, a lightning bolt came out of the sky and destroyed his father's house. His father's house was totally burned. And then he woke up and he got the officers together, got all the troops together, and said, I had this dream from Zeus, and Zeus destroyed my father's house, and this is the meaning. And someone sneezed when he was saying it. All the Greeks immediately got down on their knees, because that was like an omen or something. So anyway, so he finished, he said, the message of my dream is we need to consolidate, we need to return home to Greece. We need to not be despondent. We need to organize. So Xenophon became the leader, and he got the motivation from his unconscious, from the dream from Zeus. He led the march of the 10,000 Greeks back to Greece. All the troops survived. Maybe some got killed. And he wrote this incredible story about his journey back to Greece. And it just reminds me of World War I started with assassination. Trump assassinated this general a couple days ago. And I feel hundreds of thousands of people's lives are at risk right now. And I just hope that we return from the Middle East, get the hell out of there, get rid of this idiot that's running our country that's made these horrible mistakes. And I just hope for peace in that part of the world and no one gets killed. And I'm an American, I can't help it. I don't want any Americans getting killed. I don't want any innocent civilians over there getting killed. And maybe I'll have to make this story from Xenophon give you some hope or something. Anyway.
And maybe you'll have a dream tonight.
But thanks for talking about Greek mythology.
Yeah.
Hi. You know, I like at the beginning you had up on the board there, mental illness or archetypal expression. You know, I got a kick out of that. I think what's important to remember, you know, listen to some of the dialogue that ensued a while ago, is that, you know, the Greek pantheon and their cosmology of gods, they lived this. It wasn't, they didn't turn to it just when there were problems or trouble, you know. This was, they were turned to for daily matters that permeated the culture. They weren't just Sunday Roman Catholics that went to the church and blew out of there, you know, flipping off the person that just cut them off, you know. And I really like what you're talking about, and you know, especially your description, your honest retelling of when you took the 7 women, you know, over to Greece, you know, what you envisioned to happen, what actually happened, and how you adapted to it. You know, it's wonderful, and I thought it was good that, you know, one thing that, you know, isn't, you know, it just stuck out. Was it? You mentioned it's good to have a strong marriage after infidelity if it's confronted properly, you know. And I know that's not really what the scope of our lecture is today, but it did pop out. So thank you.
I'm sorry, yeah.
I was thinking, I've always felt in my lifetime particularly that there was a lack of female spiritual models. And therefore, it's very strange to pray, or I pray, I'm so sacred. So again, it's still an unresolved issue, and a huge issue. So one of the things, for me, I've had visions where, which was one of the things that always bothered me, I have visions where women would always appear, but they weren't anywhere else out in the culture. And these are spiritual beings. When I say women, I mean archetypal spiritual beings, feminine, not out in the culture. So that's isolated for me. So at the same time, I was listening to this and wondering. I used to call my goddess, I did have one goddess, and she was Artemis for many, 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 many years. And I lost her in my later years. But anyway, I'm listening to this, and I was admiring or experiencing how if you know, following the Greek goddesses, how many were provided female models for you as a woman.
Oh, fine. Yeah.
And the gift of going to a place that, you know, holding from Jung, but holding these female models and then going to Greece and being able to see an enactment of Demeter and Persephone. So again, I feel there is a lot of richness that isn't very universal. It's not living in a lot of people right now. Say it that way.
Or our culture. Right.
And and so just to mention, because maybe there are other people who have this too, and just wondering about this, wanting to go somewhere with it, but not knowing how to connect out to my culture or to other people. This whole thing of female spiritual models. And my sense from some experience I've had that I do know that there's a change happening in that aren't these split off aspects of the one female.
Like the great goddess.
The great goddess,
yeah.
And now we have all the split off aspects, which are, you know, wonderful and fine. But that something is trying to happen right now. So that's as much as I want to say at the moment. So, but anyway, if anyone works on these things, I'd be glad to connect with. It excites me, and I appreciate your presentation so much.
Somebody over here first.
This is like a very, a lot of fodder for discussion in this presentation, so thank you. I just wanted to say that there will be a salon afterwards if anyone wants to continue the conversation, so we have mindful of your time. So that's number one. And two, I just think, when you were recounting your story here, you talked about how you were accessing Aphrodite within and Persephone within and honoring the Persephone. Like that's the way the Greeks did it. How is this part of your normal day-to-day existence, or is this in retrospect that you were able to make those?
It was partly because we were there, and that's what we were focused on. I was focused on that. I wouldn't say it's something that I personally do all the time, although you know, I work a lot with archetypes, and my husband works a lot with archetypes, so when we discuss things, of course, we will refer back to those. So it is a part of my life in that sense, but I wouldn't say it's something that I use all the time. But I've come to trust it, and it's partly that I don't use it because I don't think to, I don't remember to, you know, and so whenever I do, it's always very helpful.
It just underscores what a much more richer life experience the ancients must have had than
Yeah, yeah. It's so hard to put ourselves in their shoes. I'm sorry, there was one here? Yeah.
What else do you know about the ways in which the Greeks themselves used the relationship to the goddesses, apart from they had statues and they treated them as true presences? What other, I mean, did people have particular devotion to one of them?
Oh, yes.
Did they have different devotions at different times
Yes.
of their lifetime? Was it, would women be, would men be devoted to women goddesses, or was it only women? How did it actually work in the culture?
There wasn't, as far as I know, it wasn't required that you be male or female to worship any of them. There were temples to them everywhere. And so you could go, you just, on your way to the bank or the marketplace, you go past a temple. And so you would go and pay your respects and maybe make an offering. And some priestesses, a lot of the priests and priestesses were priests of a particular god or goddess. So they would be, like I said, that Cassandra. Oh, I haven't talked about her yet. I will. She was a priestess of Apollo, and Apollo was the god that sat at the oracle at Delphi. And so she had the gift of oracle, of being psychic, and she could foresee the future. She was one of his priestesses, and so that's how they would identify, that there would be many different temples to all the different gods and goddesses, and anyone was free to go and visit them. And then, of course, as I talked about, there were patrons for each city. So the patron goddess in Athens is Athena, and so of course she's the most popular one that people would turn to.
So you'd have everything from like your big church picnic where the entire city would go and make sacrifices at the Acropolis, and you'd have like things you'd do in your house to your own ancestors, or to your own house gods, or your own your own. I had a weird dream, so I'm going to go and pour some wine on this rock to talk to say thank you to Asclepius about what the dream was or whatever.
Right.
And so you had this like personal lived thing as well as social obligations thing in this dance. It was very frequent. And the idea of having multiple religions at once wasn't weird to an ancient Greek. You'd have, you go to you remember this mystery cult, you remember this mystery cult, you remember this mystery cult, and it would be fine for that.
Yeah, also the gods and goddesses could be used as the explanation for why something happened. If there's if there's an earthquake, you could say, oh, Poseidon is angry. We better go make sacrifice to Poseidon. So real life events could be seen as the interference of some god or goddess. Or if my husband is cheating on me, Hera, what have you done? You cursed me. Why? What did I do to make you angry? Or whatever.
Or in the same sort of way, you'd have my husband is wandering up. Hera, bring him back. You might,
right.
Kill it up, and Hera, please bring him back, sort of thing.
You would pray to them for something, or you would see that they had been responsible for something, or something you might need that you would go to the particular god or goddess.
I have a question. You and Ed have been to Greece many, many, many times. How is the ancient Greek religious way and thought acting today in the modern culture? How is this expressed? And
well, the Greeks are Greek Orthodox, and that's very powerful. The church is very powerful.
Until a year ago, it was illegal to practice the old religion in ancient Greece. Until about a year ago.
I'm not surprised. Yeah. However, every time we've been there, and you scratch the surface and you talk to people, and you mention, now some people you mention like a certain idea, like Eleusis. I had a taxi driver who had no idea why we wanted to go to Eleusis and what was there, and he didn't even know the ruin was there. So that's one Greek. But many of them will talk to you about the stories and the myths, and they know them. They know the stories well. And so it's like, it's just under the surface is this, what would we call it, pagan, the pagan sensibilities, and knowing who the gods, and that there's statues everywhere. There's, Parthenon is still there, very popular. Of course, a lot of it's touristy now. And there are some sites there that are completely ignored. that are not rebuilt, have not been excavated, or only partially excavated. And we've actually gone to some of those sites because nobody's there. So we can do our own ritual and our retreat stuff right there in that site. I'm sorry, was that enough of you wanna?
Yeah, I would just add to that.
Yeah.
Greek culture and tradition is more than 3,000 years old. And we are such babies in our culture, we don't realize how immature we are and how undeveloped and how our topsoil doesn't go deep. But Greek goes very, 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 very deep. And so people really are very largely concerned about what is good for the soul, how to live well, how communities can get along, how to live lives of truthfulness and honor and integrity, how to seek beauty, keeping spiritual values transcendent over materialistic values. And so when we're there and when we're engaged with ordinary people, we're talking about these things. Everybody talks about these things. Everybody is concerned with the Socratic search to find truth and live a good life. And that is a primary concern rather than surface matters and materialistic matters that dominate our world. And so we really feel ourselves in a living, psycho-spiritual, mythic, moral culture trying to today embody all of these lessons and all of these values, even if the archetypes are weaker because the modern world reduces them in power. But their presence within the people's psyche is not at all weak, it's dominant.
Even if they're not totally aware of it. Yeah, it's there.
One thread I just thought I would continue to pull on is the talk about a woman's personal relationship to God after however many years, the whole millennia of patriarchal worship. And for myself personally, when I was in my 20s and I first started to hear about all this goddess stuff, other than studying it at school, that there were goddesses, but, meeting women who would talk about worshiping goddesses, I was a feminist, so on the one hand it seemed interesting, and on the other hand, as somebody who's in a monotheistic religion, it felt very threatening. And I resisted it, and over the years, and partially through my dreams, feminine archetypes, have, sort of come into my psyche, and I've really begun to have a strong feeling, I know I'm behind the game, but finally I started to have a feeling of how damaged our society has become by putting all of the emphasis on he, male. When we speak about God, I poo-pooed it for a very long time because I felt like, oh, come on, get over it. God's not a person. Just let it go, which is funny because I'm a very strong feminist. But my religious training, I guess, is so deep inside of me. And I do have this sense, and I know I'm not alone in this, that reclaiming the goddess in some way, or reclaiming the whole of God, the Shekinah, the goddess, it's going to be part of the answer to what's destroying our planet right now. And what you said at the very beginning, so simple, almost too simple to say, so I'm glad you said it. But the notion of the woman's body and earth, we hear that all the time, and I know it, but somehow the way you said it so simply today made me feel it again, which is, what we do to women's bodies with laws and rape and all the different things that are done to female bodies is exactly what we do to the earth. And by reclaiming the goddess and finding that sacredness, blah, blah. So one of the very interesting things, not to villainize the male or overly promote the female, because that's how to balance too, but a very interesting book that probably a lot of you have read, and maybe somebody here recommended to me, I don't remember how I found it, is The Alphabet and the Goddess. And it's a really interesting book about how the technology of writing, when it came to be, started to change our brains so that the abstract part of our brains became more dominant. So actually this shift toward the patriarchal God really almost came from within us neurologically, neurochemically. So fascinating stuff, but this conscious act to reclaim it. And the last thing I'll just add to that is in terms of women to worship or goddesses or whatever, Mary Magdalene, not to worship, but to have a feminine voice in the conversation. There's been a lot of new literature about Mary Magdalene, and so people who come from that faith tradition, it's not mine, but a very interesting, powerful woman apostle whose gospel was consciously buried and taken away. Now there's a lot of great writing about it, so put all that in there.
Okay. In the interest of time, I need to get started late, but does anybody really seriously need a break? And maybe we should just go for one, take like just 5 minutes, a serious 5 minutes, not 5 minutes that turns into 10 minutes. And then I'm going to talk you over to, I'm going to do some dramatic reading from the voices of the women of the Trojan War. We're going to get started. I'm going to give you a quick refresher course on the Trojan War. There's a lot of really good stuff that you can use from this, having to do with working with people in therapy. So some of you may have better memories about the Iliad and the Odyssey, but I'm just going to give you a crash course. You remember the Judgment of Paris, right? It was a huge banquet, and the goddess Eros is not invited. She's the goddess of discord. She's angry. She shows up. She throws into the crowd. She throws in the apple that's for the fairest. It says for the fairest on it. And they don't know who it's for. And the goddesses are there, and Hera and Athena and Aphrodite all want it to be theirs. And Paris is chosen because he's supposedly very fair in his deliberations, and so they suggested that he be the one to choose. And they all offered him gifts, but Aphrodite offered him that he would be able to have the most beautiful woman. And being a young guy, he decided that was what he wanted. So he chose that. He chose Aphrodite, gave the apple to Aphrodite, and then she then made it possible for him to have Helen. And Helen. She was supposedly the most beautiful woman in the world. I don't know how you tell those things in those days, but that's what she was known for. And all the men were after her. Everybody wanted to marry her. And so they all gathered together because they were afraid that whoever married her would be challenged, that other men would challenge them. And so Odysseus came up with this great, I think it was Odysseus, came up with this great idea that they would all make a pact, that they would draw lots to see who had Helen's hand in marriage, and that they would all agree that if anybody tried to challenge the husband, that the rest of them would come and defend him. So that's the setup for the Trojan War. And a bunch of men sitting around making these complicated decisions about the lives of women.
Yeah, I apologize if you said this at the beginning because I was still on the call. But was the Trojan War a real war?
Yes.
It was.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. At that time, Troy, if you think of Turkey here and Greece here, and there's islands in between, Troy was actually on the western coast of Turkey. And there's this little narrow area where the ships would go through. And because it was the Trojan region, they were charging shippers to sell their goods. So actually, in fact, the Trojan War was more about getting shipping rights than it was about Helen, with a myth, of course. through days, and to this day. And you want to add something?
Yeah,
on
well,
this?
it's also, Troy was a matriarchy. And Agamemnon and Menelaus and all the Greeks came were early patriarchies. And so literally the Trojan War was also a war of the patriarchy, overthrowing the final matriarchal cultures.
Yeah, all the queens in the story had been queens in their right, in their own right, through the matriarchy. And they all had consorts who were the warriors. And the consort, and then, so the myth, the story is really also depicting that time period right after the matriarchy, when the patriarchy was getting really strong. So the woman would take her consort as her king, and then they would be, because of their military power, they ended up being people with power. And so that all evolved. So they had the drawing, and Menelaus won the drawing. And so, of course, Paris had gone to Helen while Menelaus was away, and of course Aphrodite was involved in all this. And she, in my version of how I see it, is that she made Helen fall in love with Paris. She said, "You can have the most beautiful woman in the world." I find it very hard to believe that that meant that she was going to capture this woman and hold her prisoner. I think what she meant was, you can have the love of the most beautiful woman. That's how I interpret it. That's some of the interpretations that I have read. In any event, he could have just gone and abducted her if he wanted to abduct her. But because Athena or Aphrodite was involved, it's my belief that she put a curse on Helen and made Helen fall in love with Paris. Because that's how they did things back then. Anyway, she did fall in love with him, and they flee to Troy. And then, of course, that sets off the whole Trojan War, according to the myth. So I'm just going to run down some of the characters because I'm going to be doing some readings, and I want you to be able to know who the characters are. Some of them are referred to. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to read them all. But I have written some pieces of the voices of the women after the war, when they have been taken away by the soldiers. So there's Hecuba, who's the queen of Troy, and her consort, King Priam. They're very much in love. She did choose him. She did choose him as a king. Then there's her son Hector, who was the greatest warrior for Troy. He's eventually killed by Achilles and dragged behind his chariot for days and days until there's nothing left of him. And now this was down below in the plains, and Troy was up high where they could look down, and so the whole family was watching the war day in and day out, and they had to watch their son being treated this way. Cassandra was their daughter. She was the twin sister of Paris. And the story is that they were twins. Twins was a kind of a bad omen in those days, and so they decided to get rid of one of them, and they got rid of Paris. But he wasn't killed. He was raised elsewhere, and eventually, of course, we know what happens in the story. So he comes back. But Cassandra is the priestess of Apollo. She has the gift of oracle, of being able to see the future. But the curse that no one will believe her. Okay, so can you imagine being able to foresee the future and know that your city is going to do, and you try to warn people and nobody will listen to it? Okay, so that's Cassandra. And then after the war, she's given to Agamemnon as booty. Andromache is Hector's wife, and the mother of their son Astyanax. Astyanax is the young son, and at the end of the war, the soldiers are afraid that some of the children might grow up and try to avenge what's happened in Troy, and so they want to kill all the male children. Agamemnon is the leader of the Greek forces. He's the brother of Menelaus, who won hand of Helen. His wife is Clytemnestra, who's also the sister of Helen, which is interesting. When the war is over, one of the pieces refers to this, the piece that I did on Cassandra. Cassandra has Agamemnon killed after he comes home. She welcomes him home, has him take a welcome bath, and while he's in the bath, she has him killed because he sacrificed their daughter in order for the ships to sail. Orestes is their son, and he ends up killing Clytemnestra to avenge his father's death, and there we go. But that was the last time that blood loss, that blood letting for revenge, was that time with Orestes, and that came to an end. And then there's the wife of Odysseus, poor Penelope, who's left her pen and waiting for him for 20 years. The battle was 10 years, and then it took him another 10 years to get home. This is useful. I use it with our military families. It took him 10 years to come home. Right? We expect our military people to get off the airplane and get home right away. It took Odysseus 10 years. And he has all kinds of trials and tribulations that are not unlike the kinds of things that happen to our veterans when they get home. So it's a really, really useful model to use with veterans and veteran families. So, there were 10,000 ships assembled, but there were no winds. And there was an oracle that said that Agamemnon, the general, the brother of Menelaus, was going to have to sacrifice his daughter Iphigenia. And it crushed him, I will say that, to his credit. He didn't want to. But he was hell-bent, and they'd been waiting and waiting, and the men were all ready, and they're, come on, we're going to go, And they were all just worked up. And so he gives in, and he tricks Clytemnestra and tells her that they're going to marry her off to Achilles, the great warrior Achilles, and he says, a great honor. And so she agrees to let this ceremony happen, and then it turns out that it was for a sacrifice. And there are different stories about this. This is a depiction, but if you'll notice, let's see, can you see my marker? Yeah. This little figure up here. Now, in some versions, she's just slaughtered. She's just sacrificed like a lamb or a doe or something. But there's another version that says that at the very last minute, Artemis comes, the protector of young women. Artemis comes and substitutes a stag for Iphigenia, and she whisks Iphigenia away and lets her live with her in the wilderness with one of her nymphs. So there's two stories, but that's what happened, and that's how the winds started to blow and the war proceeded. So it was a 10-year war. Horrible, horrible battle that the families are watching from above. Throughout the whole thing. At the war's end, all the Trojan heroes are dead. Even the young males are killed, including Astyanax. And the women are all divided up among the Greek soldiers as booty. And they're all taken away in different ships, never to see home or each other ever again. They think I'm free, the favored one, to live my days in my own home, the home of my childhood, my loyal servants, my familiar bedchamber. They cannot know the abomination of loathing what I once loved. There's no home for me. A queen with nothing left to love. You pace, Menelaus. You dare not face me, knowing how I hate you. Ah, you could have come quietly, crying at my feet, begging to be forgiven, to be given another chance. You might have remembered how I loved you once. You might have tried to see me, past my full lips and ample breasts, gifts only from the goddess. You could have looked into my eyes for your soul, as you did when you were young, before you fell under the spell of war. Once my king, oh favorite prince, you learned to conquer wealth and land, but never your own pride, and never to love the woman that lives inside of me, the woman that Troy loved. You have destroyed it all. And now I must return to give you back your honor. You have conquered Troy, my husband, but you will not conquer me. Love has no kingdom to be ruled, no jewels for your plunder. I may stand by your side, sir, but you have not back your pride. Your pride is but a show, a hollow hope to hold your head up on, and all the while hiding what you have done. If I kill you, I become you. If I kill myself, I can do no honor to the dead. Alone I must mourn. For my sisters I must live. Every morsel I eat for them, every sweet scent and song upon my lips, for you, Andromache, mother, queen, and you, Sister Cassandra. Oh, poor child. You saw it all, didn't you? To know and not be believed. Oh, what cruelty. Oh, sister, how do I amend such an offense? The rage you must harbor, helpless when you could have saved us all. Oh, but it's no use. Who among us would have believed and would have surrendered Troy without a fight, even to the inevitable fate? Perhaps it was not disbelief, but resignation that our love for Troy was forever and until the end. I hold you now, Cassandra. Wherever you are, feel my embrace. Release your tears in relief of the great burden. Lift it away now on the wings of the golden eagle. You're free now. Its Andromache will never be free. Forever watching her boy, a little prince, still so pure. Oh, all you big glorious heroes, afraid of a tiny cream-faced boy. Such animals. And for me, all for me? What a husband, 10 years ravaging and ransacking the city for the woman he loves. The wife he left for years at a time while he devastated other undeserving lands. Not like you, parents, who love me lusciously, your eyes twinkling as you listen to me sing, smiling at me while I sleep. Husband of my heart, I hear you still, saying my name like silver, giving your heart like gold. I will not take the blame of this, though the men will tell it so. It was not me, but Agamemnon who launched those shameless ships. It was not me who raised the rabid swords, plundering without mercy, who bloodied all the bedsheets. And I will not take the blame for the manly vows made before my wedding day by frightened men, one for the other, in hopes of winning me like a prize mare, a crown jewel, but not the woman that I am. Oh, how I envy every servant girl, loving who she will and when. What ugly twist of fate is wealth, to have no wants save one, the only one that soothes the soul. Aphrodite, did you bless me, or was it your cruel curse to make my face so fair that men will never see my heart? Father, sitting upon your lap, your dark eyes gleaming, round lips singing, I snuggle close, smell the wine and must of you. I hear the stories, games of Troy, victories, crowns, Troy. Oh, the look in your angry eyes when I told you, the fire, falling rock. He pushed me off, said I was possessed. He sent me to the temple. Oh, your tears, dear Father, rolling down your regal face as you left me there, begging you not to go. Ah, my eternal curse, never to be believed, never. You couldn't believe me, Father. I know. How could you? Who would ever choose such a vision? I watched you die so long ago. Oh, blessed curse. Over and over again I saw it. How could I live my whole life seeing the end and not scream it to you? Oh, and Hector. Oh, Hector, you came to see me. It was harvest time, and you asked, tell me your dream of me, Cassandra. You were so perfect, your brother, Prince. Dark curls dancing around your sharp, innocent eyes. You asked me as if to humor me, but you listened hard and furrowed your brow. Then I could not say it, not all of it, brother. The battle, yes. The rage of Achilles, you begged me to tell you, but truth, pure and raw, would make any man mad, even you, my dear one. I could not curse you so, and told you it was my own grief that held me back. You held me then, a long time. And you whispered that you would always love me. Oh, shade of my brother, love me now. All the years have not prepared me for this. Now it is done. Take me with you, my sweet. Don't leave me here to remember. My curse of seeing is nothing compared to this memory. Oh, mother howling, tearing her hair as we watched him hours upon hours. Mother, mother, can you hear me? Out there somewhere. Not enough to take her sons with your swords, to rip her from your daughters who gave her such soothing, except for me who only frightened her. And now all alone with nothing but the sea. Mother, oh, such wind. Oh, the waves like thunder. No, she's too frail, mother. No, a dark, icy grave. Mother, you are queen. You are queen. Don't forget, Mama. I love you. Take her quickly, Poseidon. Let she not pound her chest for me, and let she not conjure my wicked fate. The whip, my lost virginity. Oh, angry queen, angry Clytemnestra. End me as soon as you will. Ha, Agamemnon, you die with me. Oh, mother, blessed vision. Father, Hector, The king goes home to die. Clytemnestra, Helen's sister, raising up her sword. Yes, sister, bring him down hard. Oh, Clytemnestra, sweet revenge of an angry mother, the rage of a queen for her sweet demon. Betrayed by a father, my vicious captor. A father so consumed with greed and lust for battle, her tender body like cattle he slew without a tear. Angry mother, do your will upon him, and quickly too. And me too. Oh, you will find no pleasure. I gladly give up my heart, my sacrifice for the warriors of Troy. For even as my slayer, you avenge this apocalypse. You get revenge for all the women of Troy. You do us honor to kill the beast that took our home, took it all forever. Women, though you know not, you are a blessing to me. I await you, wicked aunt. Oh, Helen, do not weep or rage. She knows not. Oh, she too will be undone. Oh, Orestes, her own son. Oh, Helen, gentle one. They say it was your beauty. I say it was your soul. Men can't tell the difference in a woman. But none could know you and not love you. Oh, my heart never to see you again. You, dear. Oh, curse of curses, you survive. A living witness. Witness to all of us. You will tell them. Won't you, Helen? Tell them lest they forget us. Oh, they will not forget. They will sing us forever. All the years they called me mad. And you, Andromache, carted away, a mere ghost of yourself, a broken, empty shell, thrown hard against the rocks, and helplessly back out to sea. I saw the sign some long time before. You wrapped around yourself in the shadows, rocking softly, muttering nonsense. Sometimes I heard you call out to Astyanax like he was your brother, and you were but a girl again. And at night you woke screaming for your nursemaid and your mother. I saw the flame but flicker in you these years, and then the storm. Oh, gods above, how dare you such a storm upon my mother's house? Wind enough to quench the hearth fire. Little Andromache, so frail of hope. Never a chance for such a soul. Sister, farewell. I saw you, Paris, with Hera in her times, and Athena with her silver shield. But it was golden Aphrodite won you, fool. To refuse Athena, Nike, cause her offense when she offered honor and victory. But you were not for battle, brother, but for love. Ah, did I share our mother's womb with you, so unlike me, as rock is to water. But you, poor boy, did not grow up in Troy. How could you love what was not yours? Still, when you came, riding high upon your satin steed, I knew you in an instant. I felt my heart beating with yours, ran to meet you like a lover gone too long. A piece of my soul rejoined, whole at last, never having known till that moment the cause of longing. How I long for you now, brother. The winsome tunes you whistled, your broad, infectious smile. Don't you know she would have loved you anyway? I have lived cursed with doom, because with every joy the sorrow deepened. Now my knowing is a blessing. Seeing what is to come kindles the flames of every moment that comes before. makes more urgent our desire and our longing. Never before, but now it's better to fear what is to come than to remember what has been. And this is a dagger. So now, I am among the spoils of Odysseus on a great ship sailing to Ithaca. I will stay this night to consider one more day. I am Hecula of the Amazon line, Queen of Troy. Oh, Troy. I cannot speak the pain of you, soiled, trampled, pillars falling, flames snuffing out what always was to me. And Astyanax. Oh, I wonder how I can speak it all. The house of Odysseus. I have no city now but this. But I am yet queen. To die now and not endure, or live on as witness, which is the greater sacrifice. I will stay the night one more day. How will it be in this house? Odysseus will, I believe, let me live out my days. The torture of me. To wake every morning with the screaming in my ears. Oh, the screaming that will not cease. The screaming in my head that swoons me. Oh, perhaps Penelope will know, as women do. There's a thunder in my belly and a rock in my heart, and she will not expect me to smile. If I received her thus, I would intuit the shell of her. If she has a heart, she will know. She will know when I tell her I'm no more a mother. The limbs of my sons strewn in all directions. My daughters gone forever from my reach to distant lands. I will never see an Astyanax. I could go wild and might still be mad. His young body, traces of body flesh still on his cheeks, and his mother, oh my dear Andromache, the light gone out of her eyes, wheeled away, staring past the rubble, past me, wheeled away in a cattle cart. I can rest soon, but who can ever sleep again? To sleep I must forget, and cannot, against my own desire. I am a servant now. Ah, when my bones are brittle, and my hands thin and soft. My grandmother was an Amazon. My mother, high priestess queen. And now I finish up for all of it on my hands and knees, washing up the dirt from my enemies' feet. Oh, if she could be cruel, this Penelope. Could just fear the queen in me. And miss the tattered woman underneath. The knife would be quick. And then Astyanax would cease falling. I might be soon enough to catch him. The knife would be quicker. My final libation to the fates. She might hate me for being the ruler. She might hate me for being the ruler of the enemy land. She may think her own son prince of the world now with my golden Hector gone. Hector, dare I live another day when he cannot? Could I bear to live? Do I have the strength to let them all live in me? How could Penelope ever know what I have seen? Her eyes could not bear it. Her ears, not even my words. I hear she's a gentle woman, used to beauty and order all around her. What does she know of the greed and lust of men? Oh, I shall be ever alone in her home. Perhaps I'll be a reminder to her of the long 10 years without her man. Oh, it's true. A small ray of hope. Although she has lived these days protected from the smells and sounds of slaughter, the visions a woman's mind can conjure when her man has gone to war offend the senses all the more. Has her fear been really less than mine? Is not the loss of one man to his woman the loss of her whole world? My Priam, chief warrior of Troy, too old for the battle, my loyal consort. Yes, he sired many sons by other mothers, but that was just necessity. They all fought bravely for us and died well, and my womb was spared. But our marriage chamber was our sacred haven where we shared, and at times, moments of true surrender where all the masks were drawn aside and we stood with naked eyes looking one to the other. If I were Penelope now, waiting for Priam to come home, I would be a youth again. At news of his return, I would imagine his face as it had been, as it might be now. I would fear the time had come too far between us and left us strangers. And I would search the class of who I was before to greet him with. What is the life of a woman who waits, if a life at all? She's neither widow nor wife, and must watch her beauty fade away as do the years. Fate could smile on me, and be cruel to him. Drown him now so close to home. But I am too gone now for revenge, and she's not my enemy. That I can think thus of her, perhaps she can of me. It's dawn. I see a light cracking through. It must be weeks. Surely the day is near that I should know my fate. I could be sold off. Men prefer to forget their wicked deeds, the easier to repeat them. With me in his house, how could he forget? Or will I be a handsome prize? Was it for glory, Odysseus? Oh, not you, once friend of Priam. There was no glory for you. I fear it was adventure, not loyalty, and challenge, not greed. And Helen, what do you know of her, Odysseus? Cursed by Aphrodite, forced to marry a brute and give up her rightful throne. It was she who, not long ago, could have chosen, like me, her own king. And was Paris to blame for loving her, when all men did? His only crime that she loved him too. And for this, my city in flames, oh, men know nothing. The world is inside out. There is no hope but death. Acid denounce, fall, ever fall. Better off you are, my sweet, if Troy cannot lose you. Now you will always be my round-eyed boy, with a handful of poppies short in the stem, and your outstretched fist as you slip into my chamber for a kiss, the golden boy of my golden boy. You will never wage war, lead an army, or ransack the heart of an old queen. You are safe, safe in my heart, in my every breath. Knife, how dare I when he stands so near watching me? You tempt me to end him as well, and I cannot. If I am held against my will, I must then somehow find the will. but my will, oh God, the poppies. I'm strangely here, no longer queen of Troy. My will is only memories. It is the mother, the wife that wants to die. But as queen, I must remember I am Hecuba, witness of my people and of my city that will not be forgotten. Knife be gone. Now you are the last enemy of Troy, and I am her last and only warrior. We have like 7 minutes before we have to be out of here. Anything anybody wants to ask?
I wanted to say something for everyone's benefit. There's a really awesome, really easily accessible website called theoi.org, which is a bunch of primary sources about all these stories and myths that we've been hearing about. So if you check it out, if you have a question about like what this god was about or what this story was about, check it out. theoi.org. It means the gods in ancient Greek.
Thank you.
Oh,
It's awesome.
yes, yes. These are the stories for sure.
So did you write those from scratch, or were you translating, or how did those words come to be?
They just came from.
They came from you. They were.
Oh yeah. Right. Yeah. Sometimes in the middle of the night they would kind of be there, and I'd get up and like.
You feel like it seems like you get borrowed by it.
I'm sorry?
It almost seems like it's coming through you, not from you.
Oh, yeah, I think, yeah. Well, there's a lot of aspects of me in some of these characters that gets activated. And I'm not an actress, so they are meant to be performed, and I have not, memorized them. I would like someday to have someone do them.
One of my favorite Greek characters is someone who doesn't get a lot of attention. Hecate, even though she's in a lot of the main stories, is there a reason that such a strong female character doesn't get that much attention?
You're saying Hecate?
Is that how you pronounce it?
Hecate,
Hecate.
yeah.
Hecate.
It's pronounced different ways, yeah.
Yeah.
She's there in a lot of the stories and myths, you're right. As I said, there are a lot, these were the primary gods and goddesses the goddesses that I'm talking about. But there are certainly, there are so many, and they evolved, so that what might be called Hecate, a certain era would have a different persona in a later time. And it looked like you didn't answer the question.
I want to add to what you're sharing.
Yeah.
The goddess tradition, of course, was long before the patriarchal tradition, and the stories and the practices of the goddesses were carried in the oral tradition before we started to write things down. The patriarchy also brought written language, and so when the myths were recorded, when the myths and stories were recorded, many of the goddess stories were censored out. They just were not recorded. But Hecate was extremely important and active earlier on before, like the other goddesses were, before the patriarchy took over. So what we're experiencing as the absence of the feminine is what culture and civilization has done to exclude the feminine from our holistic understanding of ourselves and of our life.
Yes.
And also, it's just in 2017 that we got the first female translation of the Iliad and Homer and the Odyssey in these stories, and it won pretty exciting. 2017. Took a few thousand years. Yeah. But I mean, that's so many of our Greek stories are all just fragments and like the pre-Socratic, whether it's our myths or. And I do really wonder about the scholarship, being male for so long, and we're living at this time where there's all these, for the first time, like large female voices and scholars, and kind of just how that affects our understanding of these female archetypes to, for thousands of years, have them be passed on through male scholarship. And
Right, and let's be clear that even female scholarship has to meet certain traditionally male, regulated hurdles. So, it should, we can have a whole conversation, a whole 3 hours on feminism, but in order for a woman to gain power in our culture, she has to look and act just like women and think like them. It's a messy subject, but you're right. There's a lot more coming out, and we're seeing different points of view now, and it's exciting.
Well, that's why I was mentioning that from my experience and also working with Elisa Starkweather, that women remembered. We've gone back in ritual and re-experienced from our internal memory the actual goddess matriarchal experiences. And that's possible.
Yeah, I believe that.
And that's our record. Yes, that's our record. That's our record. It's in us.
Right, right.
I think we should thank Kate for beautiful scholarship.
I will say that the Trojan War, which is a play, Euripides wrote the play, and there is a movie of it. Katharine Hepburn did Hector. You can find it. It's incredible, and it is the best anti-war movie I have ever seen in my life, and it was written.
The Trojan Women. Trojan Women by Euripides. Performed in English with starring.
Yes.
You used to be able to get it on Netflix. It's not to be missed.